All right. Hi, everyone. We are going to cover health comm and dang it, this one says culture too. We're going to cover health communication and bias. I'm sorry about the front page of these PowerPoint slides. This one says culture as well. We're going to review a little bit about health literacy, and then we're going to talk about bias. So as we know, health literacy is the ability to understand, access, and apply health information to make informed decisions about one's health and navigate the healthcare system. So we know that half of Americans have trouble understanding and acting on health information. We know that most US adults read below a fifth grade level, but we also know that medical texts often exceed 12th grade reading levels. And we also know that measurement of health literacy is problematic. So there are some strategies to navigate health literacy. Simple words and sentences, so reducing jargon, specialized terms, reduce words with atypical or complicated spellings, and use syntactically simple sentences, right? Have the physician repeat the main ideas and use narratives. Have the patient repeat them back. Have the patient and the provider talk through ideas in their own words, specifically the patient, because it's going to directly point out where information is that they understand, and then have them directly point out the information where it is on the document. Now, we also focus on media literacy and scientific literacy, so the use and access of finding things scientific and through the media. So let's talk about bias. So one reason for focusing on culture is the potential for bias, and bias in healthcare settings is inevitable. It is suggested as just one of the sources of disparities. It's not just overt discrimination, direct discrimination against people. Bias affects everybody, but how does it work? So we first got to understand social cognition. Humans are cognitive misers, and this basically means that we are lazy individuals. We don't like doing more work than we have to. So this is set in evolutionary roots. We make good enough cognitive decisions. We don't have to think through everything in depth. But we can only attend to a handful of objects at a time. Right? So with social cognition, we just make the decision that's good enough for that situation. We don't want to put in more work. We use heuristics or mental shortcuts to make quick decisions. So we determine what category something belongs to, and then we assume basic characteristics. So it's especially relied on under time pressure and uncertainty. If we have to make a decision quickly, if we're uncertain about things, we use these heuristics. So in the healthcare setting, providers who are people may unconsciously rely on stereotypes when treating and communicating. So providers are using these heuristics when they hear about your diagnosis, when they hear about what you're going through. And this especially happens when training emphasizes population diseases trends by demographics. Okay, well, you say you have this characteristic or diagnosis, or you've had this kind of symptom, right? Oh, automatically that sounds like heart disease. You're African American, it's heart disease. We're going to treat you for heart disease. We're using those heuristics, right? And we see this a lot. We also have stereotypes. So stereotype threat is the perceived risk of confirming a negative stereotype about one's social group, right? So this occurs when environmental cues make negative stereotypes associated with a person's group and their group identity salient. So this leads to anxiety, negative thoughts, decrease of performance, increased use of self-defeating practices. I'm so sorry. And practicing less or reduced importance and disengagement. So originally, stereotype threat was observed in studies of math performance, priming minority status led to poorer math performance in white individuals. You're going to be taking this test against an Asian male, and the white student was performed that the Asian would outperform them. Asians are good at math. That stereotype. And so the white student would perform worse. It's the same thing with health. A negative stereotype about your social group, your race, your ethnicity. If we're primed to believe that whites can do this, but other races can't, then other races won't perform as well. Right. So stereotype threat in healthcare. Like I said, there's concern about confirming healthcare stereotypes. So these can include unhealthy diets, being lazy, having certain diseases. It prevents patients from talking about concerns, asking some questions, and following through on their treatment plans because they have a general mistrust. The stereotype threat occurs regardless of whether the provider holds stereotypic views or intends to acknowledge stereotypes. So think about PCOS, weight gain. Individuals who have PCOS often have a hard time losing weight. Their body, their metabolism just doesn't work like it's supposed to. And so they're often thought of as being unhealthy and lazy and that they don't want to work for anything. But it's not their fault that their body won't work in the way it's supposed to. HIV and AIDS, right? People will avoid asking questions if they realize that they might have this disease, and they have a mistrust because they don't feel like they're going to be treated with the same type of respect. Okay. So, bias in medicine. This video shows an example of bias and stereotype threat in medicine. It's Last Week Tonight on HBO. You can click that link and it'll take you directly to it if you have time to watch that. So, some takeaways from health communication, culture, literacy, and bias. Disparities are caused by structural, systemic inequalities, not just choices. We don't just choose not to do something. Incorporating culture into health communication is not just about learning what a culture does, but what led to cultural differences in health. The way cultural differences are measured can be problematic. So that's with health literacy. And bias occurs whether it's intended or not and can have serious outcomes. So again, not something you actually have to turn in, but I want you to think about. I want you to come up with 3 ways that bias can impact patient-provider communication and patient health outcomes. Think about that, like in your own life. How has bias affected you? How can it impact patient-provider communication? All right, so that is the end of health comm and bias. Let's see. Next video, we are going to cover health comm and organizations. We're going to start it. So yeah, I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.